his hit leg irons and look, as a young idiot, he'd damaged his ankle too. He did happen to write a narrative or have somebody transcribe a narrative for him. And I'd tell you more about his book, The Burglar's Life. Not because I get a commission off it, but because it's worth a quick read. But it's out of print at the moment, so normally we're selling it for
Yeah.
so you can
But it was so popular, it's gone.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
the reprint was pretty popular because we were sitting around saying, buy this book, I mean, Mark is, well, if you want to be remembered well in history, it helps to write a book about how cool you are, right? And Mark's memory is really good, in fact, surprisingly good. He'll tell you the price of bread back in,
Wow.
reminiscing back at
yeah.
30 years ago. Well, wow, I don't believe a word he's saying, kind of stuff, really. That's the sort of thing. But,
So he's buried in Launceston?
yes, in a pauper's grave somewhere. So that's, again, unfortunate for him. Look, he remained a bit of a bully, this is the thing. So he had to walk around with two canes as an older man. And the narrative wasn't just written by journalists, not anybody just coming up and saying, oh, please, I'd like to know the story of your life. He was busy selling the story of his life for quite some time. You pretty much should see him on the streets. He would pin you with the canes either side of you and say, look, give me a coin and I'll tell you the story of your life and you'll enjoy the experience, won't you? So he's that sort of person. That's the sort of person we like talking about. I'd tell you a bit about Henry Savory, but I'm already worried a bit too much about having a middle-class bias in the tour so far, folks. So we should talk about some very unfortunate people. I'd like to tell you about a returned serviceman, Dennis Collins, buried somewhere here, folks. He used to be a sailor in His Majesty's Royal Navy. In fact, he'd even fought under Nelson in Japan, so a real war hero. But you can imagine there are occupational hazards being in the Navy. It was during the blockading of an American port that the ship he was on board got caught in a storm. The cannon on board that vessel cut loose and it went over one of Dennis Collins' legs. And at that point, look, his career in the Navy, of course, was cut short, and so was that leg too, this is the thing. That one place where they could look after these returning servicemen. The problem with this naval hospital in Greenwich is he couldn't actually act like a sailor within the naval hospital. So all those things sailors were known for, that was the sort of stuff you'd get kicked out for. In fact, Dennis Collins was turfed out because he swore at a janitor. He should have received a pension, but again, there is an application process, and we've already discussed how difficult that can be with Mr. Eastman. It's very hard to also not just send, but receive letters when you're a homeless individual as well. This is the other problem. So he writes the letters to all the appropriate authorities, there's no reply. Eventually, of course, Dennis even writes a letter to the King, after all being a member of his pride, the Navy that rules the waves. But there's again no reply, right? So look, Dennis Collins, being a stubborn and patient man that he was, he goes to the Ascot race course where he sees the King standing, or in his stand, watching the event. And what Dennis Collins did is he threw 2 stones at the King. The second one knocked the King's top hat off. Everybody thought the King had been shot at, so it's a pretty serious state of affairs. Of course, Dennis Collins is not good at running away from the scene of the crime. He's apprehended very quickly, tried for high treason, the normal punishments to be hung, drawn and quartered, but they changed to life transportation. He sent almost directly to Port Arthur. Of course, he wasn't good for hard labour. They had lighter duties for him to do, but you can understand his predicament. I mean, he'd served the King all his life and it really hadn't got him far, had it? And so, quite reasonably, he refuses. And of course, the authorities have to do something about this. So they say that's fine, but you're going to have to be on solitary confinement on bread and water. And he makes this stand, Dennis. He says, look, if I'm not good enough to receive the King's pension, then I'd be damned if I eat the King's food. And so he staged a hunger strike. And do you think he was successful in that hunger strike?
They didn't give in, I'm guessing.
Well, he's relevant to the island somehow, isn't he? So he wastes away after a period of about 3 weeks. And his story is interesting in itself, just because of his endurance, I suppose, and his stubbornness. But it's 8 years later that there's a change in government. So they've got rid of Lieutenant George Arthur, the man Port Arthur's named after. You've got Sir John Franklin arriving and his wife, Lady Jane Franklin. And as soon as you become governor of a place, you have to check out the special gulag, don't you? So, look, they come very soon to Port Arthur and have a tourist experience, folks. Harbour cruise around the bay. There's a point for... It's not quite but look, there's no photo opportunities of the settlement for the water, but Lady Jane Franklin gives a really good description in her diary about what it looked like from the water, Port Arthur. They get a chance to visit the Island of the Dead. In fact, her diary is quite interesting because Lady Jane Franklin said that she saw Dennis Collins' grave, along with the graves of a number of other people as well, too. And this is 8 years on, folks. After a while, it would start to look like those images. You know, there's a lot of mounds of earth here. One would look like another, and that was the original intention by the Reverend Matt. In fact, the Reverend Matten, he actually presided over Dennis Collins' funeral, and he wrote down in his diary that evening a good paragraph of venom about this awful Irish papist, you know, treasonist. He certainly would be one of those people that the Reverend Matten would classify as a sinner. But Lady Jane Franklin said that she saw his grave. So somehow, of course, these unmarked graves are being noticed. People must have been paying attention to where individuals were buried, maybe just within the culture, or possibly, look, it could have actually been some sort of ledger that we've lost to us now. I mean, that's possible, isn't it? But you know, guides just make up stuff too, sometimes too. This is the other thing. Certainly it's true, Lady Jane Franklin's diary said that she did see Dennis Collins' grave, but maybe they weren't really paying attention to where he was buried at all. Maybe, look, the guides back then were lying too and saying, there you are, Lady Jane, it's that mound over there, you know. Whether it's actively breaking the rules or lying to the governor's wife, I think it's kind of interesting. But since we still have time, I suppose I can tell you about Henry Xavier. That stone you can sort of see there, it's very different to ones you've seen already, isn't it? And that's because it's actually a modern stone. It was put in the 1990s. I'm actually older than that stone. It's something you don't get a chance to say too often around here at Port Arthur. Henry Xavier came from a privileged background. I'm sure you were really pleased with the Christmas presents you got this year, weren't you?
Yes.
Yes.